Hello everybody and welcome to Who Month 2020. This time we are starting off with 3 stories from Tom Baker's final season, colloquially known as the E Space Trilogy, and we start off with Full Circle. As always, I have in front of me the television companion for all the classic series, Synopsis. Here we go with the plotline for Full Circle. The TARDIS falls through a CVE into E-space and arrives on the planet Alzarius. There, the inhabitants of a crashed starliner and a group of young rebels called the Outlaws, led by a boy named Vash and including his brother Adric, are being terrorised by a race of Marshmen who emerged from the marshes at a time known as Mistfall. The Doctor discovers that the starliner's inhabitants are not the descendants of its original crew, as is claimed by their leaders the Deciders, but evolved from Marshmen. With the Time Lord's help and encouragement, the starliner is repaired and able to leave the planet. So, Season 18's Full Circle, the third story of that season, the first of the E Space Trilogy, and a few firsts. It's the first appearance of Adric. It's the first time a Doctor Who fan has written for the show, in Andrew Smith, and it's also the first of the last stories we see of Romana, played by Lalla Ward. A few interesting plot points in this one. It's a steady story. It's an interesting concept with the Deciders thinking they're separate and the Starliner people thinking they're separate from the people on the Marshmen and the evolution of everything. It is an interesting evolutionary story, hence the name, Full Circle, I suppose. A few good things about it. The interesting points. K9 seems to be disabled again. This time he's headless. Last time he, what was it? Leisure Hive. He went for a dip too much in the south coast of England. The Deciders are really pen pushers that follow procedure, but when all hell breaks loose, they're effectively useless. They don't really do much. I mean, they procrastinate, and that's what they've been doing for generations. 40,000 years. They say 40 generations. It's probably something like 40,000 years. They've been procrastinating. They've been pen pushing. It doesn't seem right, really. Then Logan, who's played by George Baker, becomes the third decider after the head decider gets swallowed into the swamp, and he's well known and well liked in the community. He's a little bit indecisive, but he's the one that effectively takes the lead near the end and gets things working for it. Overall, it's an interesting way of doing the a kind of enemy within sort of thing. There isn't really any main protagonists. I mean, they're more monsters of the week. It's more like a kind of intergalactic base under siege, or planet under siege as it is in this case, with the naturally evolving Marshmen, who happen to obviously be an evolution from spiders, who happen to be an evolutionary step down from the people on the Starliner, which is an interesting setup. On the cast, we've got, of course, the Doctor, Tom Baker. You can tell he's getting to the end just a little bit. It's still Tom Baker. It's still the Doctor we all enjoy and love, and the silliness is there a little bit, but it's becoming more serious again, and he's more understanding and caring, and more inquisitive. And I like the scenes that Tom has, not necessarily with K9, who's kind of going across. I'll come to K9 in a minute, actually. I like the scenes of K9, but the bits I like with when he's talking to the young Marshman that he catches and who becomes inquisitive by him, and the Doctor very quickly figuring out that there's something not quite right with what's happening on the ship and the Starliner, and he realises very quickly that they're doing repair work, but the repair work's just replacing parts, which are perfectly in working order. Everything should be working, there shouldn't be any issue. They're just effectively very procrastinating the whole lot. You then got Lalla Ward, who plays Romana. It's good to see Romana having a mind of her own a little bit. There's a couple of Perils of Pauline moments where she screams, but it's more out of relevant to the plot than anything else, which is interesting. She has this kind of confidence with her when the spiders erupt from the fruits at the end of the second episode, and she says, "Oh, these spiders!" And then when the TARDIS disappears, where the Outlaws take the TARDIS, and I'll come to them in a minute, she kind of becomes a bit more scared, understandably. But the bit I like about Romana is the bit where Tylos and Vash and the Outlaws go into the TARDIS for the first time, and Tylos is pointing a knife at her, and she effectively manages to stop him putting the knife anywhere, takes the knife off him, and hands it back to him. And it's kind of like this power thing saying, we don't need to do that. She's basically treating them like children and acting like a mother figure, trying to guide them through a little bit, which I thought was an interesting way of doing it. You then got the guest cast. I suppose we better mention K9 first. John Leeson does a good voiceover of K9 as always. K9's always fun to have. He's basically talking computer bank. The interesting bits for K9, he does a little bit where he's going through the marshland and everything. Although I don't like the joke where he comes to that river bit and he doesn't cross and he decides to go around the other way. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of K9. But it's the way the limitations are. You can tell they don't really like K9 because he gets his head lobbed off in the second episode, which I thought was ironic. So yeah, they really are trying to take him out of the picture. Really, you can tell that John Nathan Turner doesn't really like K9. Now does Christopher Bidme, the script editor. You can tell that. Then you've got the guest cast. You've got Logan, who's the main guest cast member of George Baker. Very understanding man, obviously head of community, very vulnerable. He was worried about his daughter, of course, which is understandable, and I can understand that if Kira's not there and he's looking for Kira and waiting for Kira, and Kira doesn't arrive because she's part of the Outliers and he's worried for her as a worried father. But he's also wanting to help, but feels a bit pointless helping and doesn't know where to go when he's decided, especially when the Marshmen start coming into the Starliner later in the story. But George Baker plays him solidly and has a good part. And then you got Nefrid, played by James Bree. This is the penultimate appearance of James Bree, if I remember correctly, because he plays the Keeper of the Matrix and Trial of the Time Lord. Here, it's more of a uncertain performance. James Bree's played quite strong characters before. I mean, his most famous is the War Chief, or not the War Chief. Is it the War Chief? I can't remember. Is it the Security Chief in the War Games? That's his best performance. This is more nuanced. It's like, I know what we're doing. I know we have to show authority here. I'm not sure how to show authority, but I'm going to try. And it's going to be quite a interesting performance. He plays it quite strong. You've then got Alan Rowe plays Gareth, and Gareth and Alan Rowe has been in another review I've done of Horror of Fang Rock. He was Skinsdale. Was it Skinsdale? The old man, anyway. Who's the second decider here, and he's kind of like the in-between. He's like the moderator between the two. Yeah, I have an opinion here, but it's totally up to you. What do you think, guys? And it's a solid enough part. The main guest cast that really does make an impact, apart from Logan, are the Outlaws. Vash, played by Richard Willis, who is Adric's brother. He's obviously he's playing it in a way of a young person. He wants it to work. He wants it to push through. He wants to be a leader and show his strength there. You've then got Tylos, played by Bernard Padden, who's a little bit more uncertain and unsure. And then we've got Kira, played by June Page, who is an interesting, inquisitive, stereotypical young girl character. But the three of them together kind of work in this little extra rebellious group that does work to a certain extent in regards to having a contrast between what the outsiders are doing and what the young people are doing. And I suppose because of Andrew Smith's writing, it comes across a bit more that it's working better with that kind of interaction of that team than the older people in these stories, which is it works. It makes a difference, and you can see the conflict of interest there. They are inexperienced. They're shown up by Romana. They're shown up by the Siders. But it's nice to have that independent spirit there. Now, I've left the main new cast member till last because there's a lot to talk about Adric here and Matthew Waterhouse as a whole. I am not really a fan of Adric as a character as a whole. I've made it clear in previous reviews that in the previous review I've done with Adric, which is the Visitation. I'm not a great fan of Adric as such. But here, it's interesting seeing him as a kind of artful dodger character and trying to bluff his way through things, and it's shown again in the next story as well, in State of Decay. But here, it's they're trying to make him an action hero, and they realise that Matthew Warthouse can't do it. And he's not grating here. He's actually okay to watch. I think he does complement Romana and the Doctor quite well. But there's something about the way that he acts. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't seem true. And if he is the best of those who John Nathan Turner, Barry Letts and Christopher Bidmead were trying to cast as Adric, I'm kind of concerned, because is this all that we're coming through at this point for this sort of role? Because he's not the best of the potential characters we have here. And I just can't put my finger on it. And he's okay in this story. I mean, obviously it's his starting story. He's got a background there, history that we know about with his brother and the Starliner, and his intelligence, his mathematical excellence, and you can see the Alzarian healing power that comes through for the first time. And it's interesting that you see that link going forward of that patch that he's got on his trouser leg all the way through afterwards with his costume. It's okay. It's not terrible. But there's something not quite there with the character, and it doesn't really get any better. Even in Earthshock, the last story he's in, he's not the greatest written character. He's not the greatest acted character. I just can't put my finger on why he's not 100% there. This one is written as a starting story. It's okay. It's not the strongest. It's not like some of the other characters who start off very strongly and get weaker as they go along. Adric starts kind of mediocre and doesn't get any better. In fact, it gets slightly worse. So it's really weird and really strange seeing that. When we go into the story itself and the way it's presented, there's very good use of the corridors in this. It's one or two corridors being used within the Starliner, but the way they get around that, make it look like different ones, is they've got blue screen at the end of each of the corridors that you can see in some of the shots, and that changes according to where they are in the ship. And that's quite a little visual effect there to utilise the blue screen in a way that's not terrible, but it's not disconcerting from the story. It doesn't take away from the story at all. It's very muted, but it gives a kind of sense that the ship is larger with these backgrounds they're using at some elements in the story. The lighting isn't too high. It reflects the industrious nature of the Starliner in the Starliner, and the way the lighting is used out on location in the marshes and in the river is lovely, because they're using the sun coming from the back, so it looks a bit more alien than it would be than front lit with the sun. It's lit from the back, and it makes it a little more alien, and it's a nice little direction, and it's good for the close-ups and single camera shots that Peter Grimley does in this story. The way the light reflects off the back and that, and it's quite effective. And it's interesting to think this is Peter Grimley's first directional debut in Doctor Who, and to be fair, it's one of the best ones he does. I do like the way it's been put across. When it comes to the writing, Andrew Smith does a good solid starting script. There's a lot of scientific gobbledygook that starts to get a little bit worse. As it's not as bad as it was in Leisure Hive, but there's a couple of gobbledygook bits you see later in the season that you're going, yeah, Bidme, you may be going a bit too much into the science. Logopolis is very scientific heavy in regards to that. It works here. There's enough of the evolution side of the science to make sense. It isn't overly, but you can see there's a scientific element there that definitely wasn't there in the season before that. Which is grounded in proper science. It's not scientific pseudoscience gobbledygook like you would get in sci-fi of this era. But it's written well enough, it's written solidly enough, considering this is Andrew Smith's first and only script for Doctor Who. Andy was a fan. Andy's Scottish, which always helps. And he was only 17 when he wrote it. He turned 18 while they were filming it, which is an amazing thing to think about as well. Overall, it wasn't too bad. It's pretty solid start, pretty solid writing. Overall, the story's not too bad. It runs fine. You don't get bored. It's not like it doesn't sag in the middle that much. There is enough to keep it carrying on for the 4 episodes. It's pretty good, and help from that is Paddy Kingsland's music. Paddy Kingsland is one of my favourite early 80s incidental music composers. The stuff he does in season 18 and season 19, particularly The Visitation, is brilliant with his guitar riff, his guitar leitmotifs and his drums and cymbals. You get a bit of that for the atmosphere in this one. It's better suited in State of Decay, which we'll come to next week. But I prefer his scores to Peter Howe or Roger Limb of this era. Peter Howe's alright at times. His melodies are stronger, but Peter Howe's better. Paddy Kingsland's better at the incidental, at the helping build the atmosphere, and I really do enjoy the whole thing. I just love watching episodes of this era with Paddy Kingsland's music in the background. It does make a difference to the story for me, and it brings it up, and it helped keep the story going for me as far as I was concerned for this story. And overall, that's what's kept it high for me in my rankings and my ratings. It wasn't so much the acting, although, as I say, the main cast are pretty solid. Tom Baker's good anyway. But overall, I would give this 3.5 TARDISes out of 5. So out of that, let's see where Full Circle sits within all of the stories that I've reviewed so far. Full Circle joins the likes of The Aztecs, Vengeance and Varos, Amy's Choice, The Five Doctors, Pandorica Opens, The Big Bang, and Listen in 3.5 TARDISes out of 5. At the bottom is still Time Lash with 2.5 TARDISes out of 5. And at the top, we still have The Happiness Patrol, followed by Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Caves of Androzani, The Tomb of the Cybermen, and Dalek at 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. That's it for now, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you want me to review in 2021. I'm looking for your suggestions. A poll will go up for patrons only, but at the moment the main post available to anybody to look at the Patreon page, which is linked down below. Let me know what stories you want me to have a look at in 2021. You never know, it might come out on top. That's it for now, as I say. Thanks so much, guys, for watching as always. If you like this video, don't forget to like it and share it with the hashtag teamstructor. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you know when a new video comes out. General rule, a new video every Sunday at 4 PM GMT. Next week, we have State of Decay review of the E Space Trilogy, followed very closely on the Wednesday after with Warrior's Gate. And then we finish Who Month with Silver Nemesis the week after. But until next week with State of Decay, thanks guys for watching as always, and I'll see you later.